welcome to AboutFACE presents 5 Questions With, and today's guest, Donald Margulies. Donald is one of America's foremost living playwrights. His plays, including Dinner with Friends, Time Stands Still, Sight Unseen, The Model Apartment, and Collected Stories, have been performed on and off Broadway and at theaters across America and around the globe. His accolades include a Pulitzer Prize, as well as being twice finalist for that prize, an Obie, and a nomination for a Tony. His other accolades include awards such as the Sidney Kingsley, the PEN, and the William Inge Award for Distinguished Achievements in American Theatre. He's also developed screenplays for HBO, Showtime, and Warner Bros, among others, while the film from his screenplay, The End of the Tour, was nominated for an Independent Spirit Award. For many years also, Donald has been a professor at Yale in English and Theatre Studies. Donald, you're very welcome.
Hey, nice to meet you folks.
Yeah, great to have you here. So Donald, we'll dive right in. And the first question is just what play or experience first got you into theater?
Well, let me start where I was born.
Great.
This is going to take a while.
We're going.
Yeah, but I grew up in Brooklyn, in New York City. Lower middle class family. My parents were Depression era Jews, who neither of whom graduated from college. They were not intellectuals, but they loved Broadway. They loved theater. And I grew up in the generation where a lower middle class family could still afford to go to the theater, which is something I don't think you could readily say now.
No.
But when I was growing up, if you went to a Broadway show and expected to sit in the balcony in the last row of the theater, you could buy a seat for about $3.75. This would have been in the 60s.
Yeah.
And that is just completely unheard of. And, when you consider it, we were movie going as a family, and movies would have been, $2. So to go to see live theater for that premium was just a gift. It was really a gift. So this is my way of saying that I was exposed to theater as a child. And that had a sort of seminal effect, not instantaneous, but it certainly instilled in me a love of theater and a fascination with performance. And the first play that I ever saw, the first straight play, not musical, I ever saw, was 1,000 Clowns by Herb Gardner, which was, it was turned into a film with Jason Robards and Barbara Harris.
Yeah.
And I saw it on stage with Jason Robards and Sandy Dennis. And I was probably 8 years old when I saw it, something like that.
Yeah.
And I remember, and it's a grown-up play, although there was a child in it. There's a boy in it. And it's very much about the relationship between a surrogate parent and his son. And the surrogate parent is sort of a ne'er-do-well, bohemian, anti-establishment type. So it really spoke to me as the son of a wallpaper salesman who worked all the time. It was a very interesting window into relationships, and it was very funny and it was very adult. And I remember the thrill of being a part of an audience laughing at these risque jokes and feeling so titillated by it and exhilarated by it. And so that fascination stayed with me, although as a child I showed early talent in drawing. And that determined the course of my education because I wasn't athletic. I was not, I distinguished myself as somebody who could draw. And that was a tremendous gift, to be the class artist. But it also meant that whatever interest I had in writing or theater was sort of put on the back burner, because I could just sort of draw and have people gather around me going, oh, look what Donald's doing. And I liked that. I liked the positive reinforcement that brought me. But I was also writing. I was writing parodies. In school, we would have to do, book reports and committee presentations. And I remember doing a report on the Congo. with a friend, and we came up with parody lyrics to My Fair Lady. Don't ask me why, but I was probably about 11 when I did that. So the interest in theater was early, but I didn't really pursue it with any fervor until I was an art student. I actually went to art conservatory, studied visual art and graphic design. And while I was there, I decided to scratch the playwriting itch. And I found that, I struck upon the right mentor at the right time, which is crucial.
Yeah.
And, somebody who taught, there were no teachers of playwriting at the state university I went to. There were no courses in playwriting, but there was a teacher of dramatic literature. And that man's name is Julius Novick, who was a critic for the Village Voice. And I introduced myself to Jay Novick, and I said, I'm a visual art student. I'd like to study playwriting with you. He said, have you ever written a play before? I said, no. He said, great. So he became my first mentor because he was the first person who recognized something. And he was unambiguous in his support, which is something I have acquired as a teacher. Don't hide your enthusiasm for talent. There's no reason to withhold it. Because when you share that enthusiasm, it can change lives. So it was Jay Novick who said to me, you're good at this, you should do this.
That's amazing. Yeah.
And it really did change the course of my life. So I don't know if I answered your question or if I just sort of gave you the thumbnail autobiography.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
No, that's the whole journey. That's great.
Yeah.
Okay, so Donald, so that's great. But now as a playwright, we're going to put you a bit on the spot and ask you to name one great play that you love and why.
That's easy. The play that I revere, that I adore, that I am thrilled by every year that I teach it is Our Town, Thornton Wilder's Our Town. And I've had a checkered history with Our Town, which is that, like so many American school-age kids, I was exposed to really mediocre productions of Our Town early on and had very harsh feelings about it. And it wasn't until I was in my 30s and my wife and I went to see Greg Mosher's production at Lincoln Center with the late Spalding Gray as the stage manager.
Ah, yeah.
And Bill Macy, William H. Macy, played Howie in it. It was a phenomenal production. Eric Stoltz was George, and I'm blanking on her name. Penelope and Miller.
Oh, right.
Yes,
Yeah.
And it was phenomenal. It was really kind of earth-shattering for me because I never realized what a beautiful, dark play it was, and how existential, and how the gravitas of it never came clear in high school productions. And so I was so moved, I was moved to tears by it. And it was the first thing I did when we got home was I looked at my copy of Our Town to see what Greg Mosher had changed. He had changed nothing, nothing. And I realized I had changed. I grew up in the interim. I had experience in life in the interim. And so that continues to be the play that I sort of hold up as the paradigm of a great American play. One that I love to teach every year to my undergraduates. And sort of a sidebar to all this is one of the great thrills of my career was when I was invited to write the introduction to a new paperback edition of Our Town. I was invited by Tappan Wilder, Thornton Wilder's nephew and literary executer, who actually, he called me one day, knowing that I admired Wilder. He called me one day and he said, Donald, there are going to be new editions of Thornton's plays. Would you like to write the new introduction for The Skin of Our Teeth? And I said, I think Paula Vogel should write the introduction to The Skin of Our Teeth. He said, oh, that's a great idea. I said, so I just talked myself out of a job. And he said, well, would you like to do Our Town? I said, yeah. Yeah, I would be thrilled to do Our Town. He said, well, we'd be thrilled to have you do that. So I did. And it truly was one of those, meeting of moments in my life that came together with that assignment, which was something I'm still so proud of.
Fantastic.
Great.
So can you tell us about a time in your theater life where something turned out differently than you expected it to?
Well, there are far too many of those. And we don't really have enough time to do that. But I've had a wonderful career. I'm very delighted and proud with all the good work that I was able to do with extraordinary people and all of that. But I also, it took me a little while to break through. Certainly a while to break through by my own expectations, frankly. I thought I would break through in my 20s. It didn't happen. I was on the cusp of it. When I was 29, Joe Papp produced me at the Public Theater. And for someone of my generation, a theater person of my generation, Joe Papp was a giant.
Yeah.
And to be produced at the Public Theater was all I wanted. I never wanted Broadway. I never wanted Pulitzer Prizes. I wanted Joe Papp to acknowledge my talent and produce me. And he did when I was 29. He produced a play of mine called Found a Peanut. And Claudia Weil, who at that point had only directed film, she did a film called Girlfriends, which was sort of a seminal feminist work of the 70s. And in 1984, she directed Found a Peanut at the Public Theater with Evan Handler and Robert Joy and Robin Bartlett and Peter McNichol. And it was a gorgeous, gorgeous production. And it's a play about a group of school children or children between the ages of 5 and 14, played by adult actors. It takes place in a Brooklyn backyard in the summer of 1962. And autobiographical to a certain degree. And Joe Papp loved the play. He really did love it. He got behind it. And he was, kept saying, this is going to do it for you, kid. This is going to do it for you. And it didn't. It didn't do it for me. Frank Rich didn't like it in the New York Times. And that's all that mattered. And that was really deeply, deeply disappointing. Because I was living the dream. I was 29, Joe Papp was producing me, and I had this beautiful production that I was so proud of, that I was so thrilled by, that people were loving until the New York Times came, and then they thought, maybe you shouldn't love this so much. And that was really, didn't go the way that I'd hoped. And there were a couple of these near misses or total misses that preceded my bona fide breakthrough, which didn't happen until 1991-92 with Sight Unseen. And I was really at a turning point in my life and my career by 1991-92. My wife and I had gotten married. We were expecting a child in 1992, who was now almost 30 years old. And I was really at a turning point. And my feeling about Sight Unseen was, well, if this doesn't do it, this, which I admitted arguably was the strongest work I had ever done, the most mature work I had ever done. I was, 36 years old, 37 years old, not a boy wonder any longer. And I thought, if this doesn't do it, we're moving to Los Angeles and I'm going to write for television, which is not to say that it's a failure, but it would have been a change of course. P.S. Frank Rich, same Frank Rich, loved it, and it changed my life. It absolutely changed my life. So whenever critics tell you that, critics don't close plays, producers do, no, it's not true. Critics can make careers. And I think it's as true today as it was 30 years ago. But that really was somebody like flipped on a switch. And there I was in the light. And made all the difference.
Wow.
Okay, so Donald, so you talked about there about, that you've had this wonderful career in the theater and done so much, but you also have worked on screen and things like that. So what is it that keeps you coming back to the theater? What moves you? What excites you about theater?
Well, it sounds like a cliche, but there's really for a creative writer who writes dramatic writing, I take great pleasure in the screen work that I've done. Most of the work that I've done as a writer for hire has been as an adapter of material, and I love it. I love adapting material that I truly want to adapt, that I'm attracted to, that I either think, oh, the research is going to be so fantastic. That was wonderful, just a wonderful detour from the theater. I found that I as successful, relatively speaking, as I have been as a playwright, it wasn't enough to live on. It was my late friend and mentor, Robert Anderson, who wrote Tea and Sympathy and I Never Sang for My Father, who supposedly coined the phrase, you can't make a living in the theater, but you can make a killing. And it's true, you have a hit play and you'll get 5 good years out of it. And then you have to kind of scurry around and figure out, well, what's going to be the next source of income? I mean, that's the thing that people sometimes say, well, this is what I do. It's a labor of love, but it's also, it's my occupation. It's my livelihood. And I would like my plays that I've toiled over for 5 years to actually generate some income, ultimately. Not that that's my goal, but it certainly is something that I hope for. So how did I get on that? I'm trying to remember how I you asked me about film work. Film work in particular. Well, going back to the theater after, I find that there is nothing more thrilling than the first day of rehearsal with a new work. I get excited. I get, goosebumps still. And, and I think for a playwright who doesn't collaborate in the theater world, except in production, that first day of rehearsal is such a gift. It's a party. It's the reward for being alone and just self-flagellating for fun. And I've been very fortunate to work with directors that I love and admire and learn from, and so it's really that's part of the joy of why I keep coming back.
Fantastic.
Yeah, that's great. So, you've talked about many skills that you have, and I'm just wondering if there's any skill from working in theater that you've found that has been useful to the rest of your life, the non-theater elements of your life.
Well, I'm going to sort of flip that question, and I'm going to say that teaching, being a teacher for over 30 years now at Yale University, I think it's made me a better communicator.
Okay.
And I think the experiences have fed each other. Being in a rehearsal room and being in a classroom are not that dissimilar, because you want results from both of those situations, and you want to cooperate with people in both of those situations. And you don't want to be pedantic, but you also want to be clear and articulate in what your hopes and dreams and expectations might be. And how do you achieve that? So I think, the communication skills of being a living playwright in a room with living actors, you hope they have all been well cast, you think they have been, so they will serve the play. And you just want to be able to stay out of the way, but also intervene when it could actually be constructive. Because you want to be constructive. You don't want to just, throw bombs and spitballs.
That's great.
That's great. Well, Donald, this has been really terrific. Thank you so much.
This feels like more than 5 questions, though, guys.
Again, there was fraction questions slipped in there. You just didn't realize it. But one more question, just to keep them going. As a bonus, can you tell us anything about what you're working on at the moment?
I can try to do that. The pandemic has been a challenge. I'm not the first person in the theater or in life to make such a banal comment, but it's been very hard. I have found it hard to be sort of a late career playwright at this convulsive time in the industry and in our culture worldwide to generate new work. It's just, it feels very strange. It was a play that I started working on before lockdown, which I put aside for many months. I just couldn't look at it. I'm not the sort of playwright who has 3 ideas floating around at once. No, I'm a pretty monogamous playwright. I find something that I think I can love and I stay with it. I don't have other ideas that I'm dabbling with. I just don't. However, I could be working on a screen project while trying to figure out a play, because I don't see those as conflicts of interest. They're very different. I'm using different parts of my brain to do this. And that's different. I returned to this play, which I'm calling Lunar Eclipse, which is a 2-hander, very much a reflection of being in my 60s. How did that happen? It's a rumination. The play is really a rumination on being late middle age. You can't even call it middle aged anymore. And really, and I think it doesn't hit the nail on the head of the time we're living in, but I think it certainly, and I hope it does in a subtle way, resonate about all of our feelings of mortality and about ourselves, our bodies, our communities, our planet, all of that. And so Lunar Eclipse is sort of my, effort to try to address it, to try to, speak to the moment without speaking directly to the moment. And so that's the play that I'm trying to, when I'm working on a new play, at the top of the page, at the header of the page, this is true of all of my drafts, it says bad rough draft.
I love it. I love it.
Just a reminder, okay, this can be really shitty. It doesn't matter. It's a bad rough draft. But just get it down. Just get it down.
That's great.
I have not yet reached the point where I've removed that header, which is a rite of passage for me, where I think, okay, maybe I can call this an actual draft. Just sort of own it. So I'm not, the bad rough draft stays right now.
No, that's
so that's what and I'm teaching. Actually right now I'm teaching for the 3rd time. I'm teaching screenplay adaptation.
Cool.
To my undergraduates, which is a great departure, just to kind of shake things up for me a little bit. And I get to do a master class in the end of the tour, the film you mentioned in your introduction, which was a great labor of love that I'm very proud of. And I get to talk about the whole process. So I'm looking forward to that class.
Excellent.
Fantastic. Great.
Well, Donald, thank you so much for joining us. It's been so great to chat with you.
Lovely to meet you guys. Good luck with everything you're doing over there.
Thank you.
You keep in touch. I hope I get to Dublin.
Oh, please. You're very welcome.
Absolutely.
Come, please come.
Oh, okay. I'll remember that.
Yeah. We have a couch.
Well, good luck to you both.
Thank you. You too. And a huge thank you to the audience too for joining us. If you enjoyed the interview, please like below, follow AboutFACE, and share, because we believe theater makes life better. See you next time on AboutFACE Theater presents 5 Questions With. If you've enjoyed this video, please subscribe to us on YouTube, like us on Facebook, and share. Thanks for watching.